Hey everybody, and welcome back to another lecture with Coding with Roby. And in this lecture, we're going to go over flow control, which is going to introduce if, else, and elif statements to us. Now, the first thing I want to say is variable x is equal to 1. And right underneath, I'm going to say if x is equal to 1, then print x is 1. And now I'm going to save our application and run the application. What we can see is x is 1 is printed to the terminal, which is the same statement that's inside our print statement. Now let's go over exactly what is going on here. We have a variable that is equal to 1. We then have an if statement saying if x, which is going to reference the global variable of this x, is equal to 1, then to print x is 1. And what we can also see is at the end of the if statement, we have a colon, and then under the if statement, we have this print method, which is 4 spaces from the end of the IDE. Now what the 4 spaces reference in Python is that it's now in this block. It's in the if statement block. If we go down here, jump outside of the block, and now say print outside of if statement, and now we run the application, we can see that it prints outside of if statement and x is 1. However, if we change the variable from 1 to 2 and we rerun the application will only run outside of if statement because x is not equal to 1. Therefore, the code that's under the if statement will not be executed. What we can say though is if x is greater than 1, then print x is greater than 1. If we rerun this application, we can see that x is greater than 1 outside of if statement. Now, other than this outside of if statement, there's also something called an else statement. So right under if, I'm going to say else, colon, enter, which in PyCharm is going to automatically do the 4 spaces to the IDE. And I'm going to print x is not greater than 1. If we run this application to start, we can see that it's going to say x is greater than 1 outside of if statement. If we change x to 0, and we save the application and run it, we can now see that it says x is not greater than 1 because it looked at the if statement, is x greater than 1, x is not greater than 1, so it went straight to the else statement, so if else, it went to the else statement, x is not greater than 1, and then of course we printed the outside of if statement because that's going to render no matter what. Now a better example of all of this is let's deal with hours. I'm going to say hour equals 13. I'm now going to say if hour is less than 15, print good morning. And then else print good afternoon. If we rerun this application, we can see that we get good morning because hour is less than 15. But if we changed hour to 16 and we reran the application, we're going to get good afternoon. Now there's also something called an elif statement. And now an elif statement is going to be another statement under the if statement that has a condition. So right now we can see that the if statement is hour less than 15 is a conditional if statement. The else's condition is if the if doesn't render, render the else. So I'm going to change hour back to 13. And for this afternoon, I'm going to say elif hour is less than 20, print good afternoon. Else good night. If we save this application and run it, we can see that we get good morning. If we change it to 18, we get good afternoon. And if we move it to 21, we're going to get good night. So if statement is rendering if this condition is true, run under the if statement. If not, let's move on. Because we have an elif statement, it's now checking another condition once the if statement fails. Since the if statement failed, it went to the elif of hours less than 20. If this is a true statement, we're going to print good afternoon. However, if this condition is also false, it's going to go to the else statement and print good night. Now, one key note is you can have as many elif statements as you want. So we can have one if, one else, but as many elifs in one single unit of if else's. This wraps up flow control in Python, and I will see you in the next video.